Welcome to the True Wealth Investors Real Estate Podcast. Creative investing strategies to help you build true wealth. I'm your host, Chad Harris. All right, welcome back, everybody. Good to see you, True Wealth Investors Real Estate Podcast. If you are ready to change the financial path of your life, if you are ready to buy assets, generate cash flow, and create generational wealth, this is the show for you. I am glad you are here. And if the content on this show resonates with you, excites you, and gives you actionable steps to move towards your goals, please share it with other people. Let other people know about it. That's how we can reach more and help more people. All right. So I am really excited for the show today because we have a guest. You know, a lot of times on the show, I talk about how to buy assets, and generally it's one house at a time, building a portfolio of rentals and owning those rentals over time gives us all the good things we're after, right? The cash flow, the wealth, the freedom. And our guest today is going to talk about how to scale very quickly without having to deal with tenants or toilets or anything like that. So I know you're going to want to tune in and pay attention here. So without further ado, welcome Alex Pardo. Glad you're here.
Chad, I appreciate you having me on the show, man. I'm excited for our conversation and look forward to pouring into your audience.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to it. You know, we cross paths a lot at different
Yeah,
masterminds, and I know we relate on a whole bunch of things as far as integrity and faith and family and all the things that really matter,
that's
as
right.
well as real estate, right? So,
That's
so
right.
I'm glad to have you on and have you offer your insights for the audience. So.
Yeah, man.
Just to set the frame a little bit, give us a little bit of your background, kind of what the start was, where you are now.
So I'll start when I was around the time of college. So just to give you a little bit of background and context, and I'll keep my story short and sweet because really it's about what I'm going to share with you that I think can change people's lives. Not so much about me. I quickly realized nobody really cares about me. But just so you have some context and background, I come from a great family. I was blessed, middle class. I didn't have a silver spoon in my mouth. I also don't have a rags to riches story. Very blue collar. My mom's a nurse. My dad worked for a pharmacy company, and they instilled in me the typical rich dad, poor dad, the poor dad advice of go to school and get a good job. And that's what they knew. But something inside of me, Chad, I've always been very ambitious, and something inside of me wanted more. Fast forward to college, for some reason, I didn't pursue entrepreneurship at that time. So I started interview with big Fortune 100 companies. I ended up getting a job with General Electric in their financial management program. And one of the things that I think God's blessed me with, and I'm not very good at a whole lot of things, but there's a few things I'm pretty decent at. And one of those, Chad, is if you don't know what you want, ask yourself what you don't want. And oftentimes that mindset and approach can lead you to what it is you actually want. And for me at the time, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted, but I remember working at General Electric, and 3 months into the job, I was averaging 70 plus hours a week. I was in front of Excel all day. And I wasn't sure what I wanted, but I looked at my boss and I looked at her boss all the way up to the CFO of GE at the time. And I'm like, I know I don't want that. And I quickly started to immerse myself in books and just reading and educating. And I realized, like, hey, this real estate thing, I think there's something to it. At the time I read a stat that it's made more millionaires and so on than any other industry. And I don't know if that's still true, probably not. But I was like, man, I like real estate. And so I just started educating myself. I had a 2-year commitment. And so I basically fired my boss January of 2005. That summer, I went backpacking around Europe with another buddy of mine. So we hit 53 cities in like 23 countries in 3 months. And I mentioned that because when I was on the Eurorail, that's when I made the decision and commitment after reading Think and Grow Rich and Rich Dad Poor Dad and The E-Myth. Those 3 books had a really, really big impact on me that summer. And it's so interesting to me, Chad, how, man, to me, God opens up a lot of doors and paths. Other people might feel it's the universe or whatever they believe in. At that time that I had mentally committed on the Eurorail, when I moved back to Miami, I'm going to get into real estate. it was less than a week later. I walk into an internet cafe in Ibiza and I had an email from a buddy of mine inviting me to a marketing for deals boot camp being held by a guy named Dave Lindahl, who's a big apartment guy in Atlanta. This was October 2005, less than a week after I decided and committed on that train that, hey,
Mm.
I'm going to get into real estate. It was $997, which for me might as well have been 100 grand because I had funded this trip on a credit card. I wasn't going back to a job. In fact, I was moving back in with my parents at 25 years old, not the way I drew it up. And so I had a lot of motivation to make this happen. And I was more driven by avoiding pain, i.e., going out and getting a job and working for somebody, than I was than the money or whatever I think I could attain starting my own real estate business. But yeah, man, to wrap up the story, I attended that boot camp. I pulled out one of the pre-foreclosure letters that I got in the manual. I went to Kinko's at the time. I made a bunch of photocopies and I still remember like the three black holes that you saw from the photocopies. Like
Yeah.
that's how like ready, fire, aim I was. And I remember sitting at my parents' kitchen table. This was late 2005, hand addressing envelopes and stuffing them. And I sent out my first direct mail campaign of 300 and something pre-foreclosure letters. I ended up getting some calls. I fumbled my way through my first deal, which was a short sale. And between myself and a partner, we made 44 grand on that deal. And I've pretty much been unemployed ever since.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love the success story. I love, the fact that maybe you would have had the invitation from your friend, but if you hadn't had the time on the train and the books and the like mental preparation, God kind of tilling the soil and making you ready for the seed, you probably wouldn't have taken advantage of it or seen it as an opportunity. And I love hearing how all that comes together.
You bring up a great point. I probably would have seen it, not as spam because it was coming from a friend, but I probably just wouldn't have paid it attention. But when you immerse yourself around the right people in the community, when you have faith as your foundation, and then you allow God to kind of work in your life, you start to recognize the right opportunities that you should take advantage of. And you also recognize which opportunities you shouldn't take advantage of because just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. But for me, it just felt like right place, right time. It was a God thing for me. It was timing. And I don't know that I had that realization that that's what it was then. But now, since I've grown spiritually and I've done a lot of work in myself, I believe it's 100% what it was.
Nice. That's great.
Yeah, man.
How did you go from, okay, so for everybody listening, I didn't even say in the intro that you are focused on self-storage now, and that is
Yeah.
the model to scale, right?
Yes. Yes.
So, but how did you get from that first foreclosure, the first letter that you photocopied and ran and mailed to
Mhm.
self-storage?
Man, that's there's about a 14-year gap in between those. And one of the things I've been very open and transparent about on my podcast is that I think one of the biggest lessons learned in my journey that I share and reflect back and talk to people about is it's ironic, Chad, because I got into real estate because of all the reasons that you share with your audience and the reasons we love time freedom and cash flow and tax advantages and all this good stuff. But I felt like I ended up playing the wrong game. I was primarily a wholesaler. I've done a lot of real estate transactions throughout the years, but like wholesaling, I just kind of fell into that hamster wheel of like getting the big pops of income. But I made a lot of money, but I wasn't building wealth. And so I started
Hmm.
building a rental portfolio in 2018. I got to five houses. I live in Miami. These houses were in a B, a neighborhood in Cleveland, Ohio. And it was going all right. I was generating $200 to $300 a month in cash flow, but then typically once a year I'd have some major event happen, a furnace, an HVAC system, something, and then my cash flow would kind of be wiped out. And I quickly realized I'm going to need a lot of doors for this to be a cash flow play. And what I realized, but I had a bunch of equity trapped in these houses. I bought them right. And I told my wife, I said, we kind of had that fork in the road moment. I said, we can certainly build wealth building a rental portfolio. But I was telling my wife, I'm like, there's nothing wrong with that. I just kind of feel like there's a better way. And I hadn't even considered storage. At that time, I was coaching real estate investors and I ended up taking on a coaching client who owned the storage facility. And you know how it is when you coach somebody, you get an inside look into the business, what's working, what's not working. And here I was looking at this guy. He had cash flow, he had time freedom. He wasn't dealing with tenants and toilets and a lot of the traditional headaches of real estate. And it was at that point that I said, okay, I think this might be the path for me. It very much so aligns with what I wanted in a business. Just for context, Chad, around COVID, I shut down a very profitable wholesaling operation. I had a team of, I think at the time, I had a team of 7 or 8 people. We were wholesaling on average 3, 4, 5 deals a month. And even though we were profitable and making money, I realized that that model didn't align with what I wanted. First of all, my overhead had ballooned to about 40 to grand, 45 grand a month. And sorry, do you still see me and hear me?
Yep, yep. We're still
Okay,
with you.
my screen went dark on me for a second. Sorry about that. My overhead had ballooned. I felt like I was a firefighter. I was putting out a lot of fires at the time, and I started to like look into commercial real estate. And I incorrectly assumed I was going to transition into multifamily. But after having this experience with a coaching client and looking at the self storage asset class, I was really turned on by a lot of what I was starting to get educated on. So everybody knows about the whole tenants and toilets and no trash and all that. But I didn't realize, and at the time, it was the lowest, it had the lowest default rate of any commercial asset class.
Hmm.
And and it's a very, I started to learn that it's a very sticky product, right? So to give you an idea, Chad, at our storage facilities, the average length of stay is a little bit over 2 years. So when people rent a storage unit, they stay and they pay month after month. And people don't really visit their storage unit all that often. And so there's not a whole lot of wear and tear. And when I had my rentals, if I had a tenant move out, all of a sudden I had to invest hundreds or thousands of dollars making it rent ready, putting it back online to rent it out. And with storage, I just had a lot. I've never been a good rehabber, although I've done my fair share. So I have less rehab. I'm not really dealing with people per se. I'm not dealing with plumbing and all that kind of stuff. And so it just very much aligned. And then the clincher for me, there were two things that like put it over the edge for me. I knew that I didn't want to build a big team and I wanted a simple business that could be run remotely that wasn't going to be heavy. I didn't want $40,000 a month in overhead. And when I learned that in storage, you can run and manage and operate these facilities remotely from really anywhere in the world, that did it for me. And then I learned about this thing called forced depreciation. And you know how in single family, you know how we value properties based on comps, like what are houses in the area selling for? In commercial real estate, the value is determined by the income the asset produces. And as an operator, I have more of an influence on determining the value of the asset because I can do things like raise the rents, implement different streams of income like admin fees and lock fees. I can expand, I can add technology. There's things I can do that when I generate more net operating income, it has an exponential effect on the value of the asset.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, I can go on and on, but those were some of the reasons I said this makes a lot of sense for me.
Yeah, I love it. I want to dive into that forced appreciation and underwriting a deal, how to look at a deal, all of that. I think
Yeah,
it's also interesting. Well, one, I'm glad you said you were very successful in wholesaling, but it wasn't leading towards wealth, which was your goal, which is
yeah,
something I talk a lot about. In that if we truly want to create wealth, if we want that financial freedom, time freedom, all of those good things, we need to be the owners of the real estate. And
yeah.
wholesaling works well in certain contexts. You get a odd deal from marketing that you don't want to keep. Wholesaling's great, but if it's the focus of our business, it just won't lead to that destination we want, which is wealth and freedom. So I love
That's
that.
right.
And it's
That's right.
interesting that you kind of moved to self-storage, getting away from the wholesaling business and the high overhead. And it was like, you know, um, kind of to your point earlier, where as long as you know what you don't want, you can end up where you truly do want, right? Even if you
That's
don't
right.
know what the destination is at the start. So,
That's right. That's right. And I think a bigger point to that, Chad, is even if you can't ultimately land on what you want, fortune favors the bold, right? That's a Virgil quote. And what I mean by that is that you're going to learn more by taking some type of action forward. And I'm not going to use the take action because I know everybody uses that, myself included, but it's for a reason. You need to act in order to see some type of results, and then you can modify, tweak, iterate from there. And I always tell like our Storage Wins members and coaching clients, like, yes, you want to consume valuable content, but what are you going to do with that information? You're going to learn so much more by picking up the phone and having a conversation with a storage owner. You're going to learn so much more by looking at the numbers on an offering memorandum that a broker sends you and underwriting or analyzing the deal than you will by listening to a podcast or reading a book. And so
Yeah.
you can't just watch people play the sport, but if you want to get good at the sport, you got to get in the game and play it yourself.
Yeah. 100%. I like it.
Yeah.
So, we don't have to know every step on the path. We just have to know the first step and just
That's
keep
it.
taking that next step.
That's it. That's it. Dude, I just had a conversation with somebody who I asked her, I said, how long have you been thinking about pursuing storage? And she said, oh, a couple years. And this person has probably knows more about storage than 99% of people because she's constantly consuming information and she's bouncing from here to there. And I said, what's gotten in the way? Like what's holding you back? I mean, you've educated yourself, but 2 years, like how many offers have you sent? Like why don't you think you've bought a deal? Zero offers sent. That's a problem, right?
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
said, what's holding you back? And she's like, I just have so many questions that haven't been answered. And she had a breakthrough. I said, I still have questions that sometimes I need answered. And I've been doing this full time 5 years. I have mentors in this space that sometimes have questions. And I said, eliminate the feeling that you need to have every I dotted and every T crossed in order to do something, because that's what's always going to keep you stuck where you are. And I said, right now, you consuming information probably makes you feel good, but does it move the needle towards your goals? And she kind of paused and like, I think she had a breakthrough. And she's like, you want to know what? Like, I've never quite heard it that way. And you're 100% right. I'm like, so eliminate the need to feel like you need to have every question answered and trust and have faith that when you surround yourself with the right people and you have guidance, that you don't have to have the answer today, but that will be uncovered.
Yeah, I love that. Too many people think their doubt or their fear that's holding them back from making that offer. Just making an offer, right? Not even closing a deal, just making an offer
Yeah.
is an information, lack of information. But I think more often it's just a lack of confidence. And more information isn't really what's going to give them that confidence, right? They need to just
Yeah.
double down on the confidence in themselves that they can figure out a solution to a problem they get into and that they're in the right circle, right?
Yeah, man.
Are they surrounded by the right people that can help them overcome any issue they come across on the way? I love that.
100%. Yeah, man. 100%.
So I think it's interesting to point out too, for anybody listening and says, what is Chad doing here? What's he talking about? We talk about rentals every week. Now all of a sudden he's looking at self-storage. What's going on here? I think it's really interesting that Alex and I both were working towards and racing towards the same thing,
Yeah.
right? We wanted to own real estate. We wanted to scale. We wanted freedom. We didn't want a lot of overhead. Um, and we both attained that, just different paths,
Hmm.
right? And I am a very divergent thinker. I love just debating ideas and looking at what is down that path. How does Alex's path compare to my path? And so I love the whole discussion. And
Yeah.
I don't think it's even an either or. I think
That's right.
what are we passionate about building and what's the best way to get there? Because in
That's
the end,
it.
you know, I'm not going to be on my deathbed saying, "Ooh, I built such a beautiful rental portfolio." And Alex isn't going to be on his deathbed talking
Right.
about the great self-storage portfolio.
Right.
He's going to be talking about the life that those provided, right?
Yeah.
And the experiences we shared with people we care about. So,
Yeah. And for me, Chad, first of all, I echo every single word you just uttered. And the only thing I would piggyback and add to that, and I believe for you that's the same. Otherwise, like why would you be investing your time and energy to consistently put out valuable content? But I think you and I have a genuine desire to create lasting impact and to help people.
for
And
sure.
sometimes I get the question like, hey, if storage is so great, like why are you coaching others? Like why are you talking about it and teaching? And that tells me a lot about the person's mindset, right? And I'm a very abundant thinker. Like I believe there's more than enough opportunity. And to me, it's really a mindset of collaboration, not competition. I could never buy all the storage deals, all the great storage deals out there. Like I'm just one person, you know what I mean? And so, and what I've come to realize is that this is not a volume game for me. Like I don't need to build a massive storage empire of 30, 40, 50 facilities, right? A handful of really, really good facilities, and that can change your life in ways that you wouldn't even imagine. And so, yeah, and it's interesting that by sharing this, people bring me opportunities and we get to collaborate and work together. I mean, I get to impact people. And so, man, that is the reason I started a podcast all the way back to 2016 that I'm still doing and that I've been coaching people since 2013. I genuinely get more joy and fulfillment from knowing that I've been a part of somebody's journey than closing another deal. When you learn this and you close it, you know, I'm grateful for it. Don't get me wrong. It's awesome, but it's just another deal.
Yep.
Like that
Amen.
helps me and my family, and that's great. And we need to provide for our families and take care of our loved ones. But it's just really cool and meaningful and fulfilling when you know you've been a part of somebody's journey.
100%. Yeah. When I close a deal now, I mean, it's all fine and dandy, but it's really not even a celebration. It's just, oh, that's
Yeah.
another deal. But
Yeah.
when a client closes a deal, man, I'm on cloud nine. I'm like,
Same. Same.
yeah, that's the greatest day. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Why do you let me this is your podcast, man, so don't feel free to knock this question down, but like I love the point you brought up that like even though we're on different paths, it pretty much leads to the same place. And this isn't a conversation about like which asset class is better and this is better than that. They're all great. I think it's important that you pick a lane. One of the things that I didn't know when I transitioned into storage, Chad, that I know now, I thought incorrectly that I was going to need to learn a whole new set of skills, right? Like I viewed it as a completely different business that wasn't very parallel to what I was doing as a wholesaler. And what I've come to learn is that real estate is real estate. The way that we generate leads, the way that we market, the way that we have conversations with owners and property owners, the way that we negotiate and send offers, all of that is very aligned in terms of single family and storage. I would say where the nuances, where it starts to like be a little bit more nuanced is how we evaluate or underwrite a property. And then how we obviously manage an operator because storage is a business, an actual business that just has the benefits of real estate. But I share with people all the time. I mean, one of the things we help people that come from the single family space and storage is not a shiny object because it's the same things they're doing to generate leads. All we teach them is how to underwrite the opportunities and what to offer. And then I have people in our community that all they do is wholesale storage facilities. I have others that will not even operate the business though. They're just really good deal finders. They find the money and then they have somebody else manage and operate it, and then they get equity and cash flow in the deal. So because the pie is bigger, there's more ways to get involved, is what I've experienced. But if you're really good and you love single family, like stick to it and just build a portfolio the way Chad's teaching you because it all ends up in the same place.
I love it. Yeah. I love all the different paths and ideas.
Yeah. Yeah.
However we can get there. That's the important part, right? And I hope everybody listening believes 100% you can get where you want to be. Pick a path, commit to it, and just do the work.
Yeah.
You're on the right path already because you're listening to this podcast. So,
Yep.
all right, let's dive in, Alex. Let's get to the nitty gritty. Let's talk
All right.
about when you're looking at a self-storage deal. What are the primary numbers you're focused on? How do you underwrite it? What does the financing look like? Things like that.
Yeah, man. I wish we could whiteboard this out because it's so much easier to like walk somebody through it if visually, but I'll do my best to explain it from an audio perspective. So look, first thing that let me give you some quick, simple back of the napkin analysis in terms of underwriting an opportunity. Let me frame it in this context first. I've had hundreds and hundreds of conversations with people that want to get involved in storage. I've talked to people, I've seen what works, what doesn't work. If I had to boil it down to three roadblocks, three obstacles that prevent people from getting involved in storage, it's these three. Number one, People get stuck in terms of they don't know where to find deals. And if they do know where to find deals, they don't know what a good deal looks like and what's not a good deal. And so as a result of that, they get stuck. Number two, the funding piece of this from a mindset perspective really, really holds people back. It's like a huge weight around their ankle. And what I mean by that is sometimes people are intimidated because it's a bigger purchase, it's a bigger asset, and they don't have they have this false belief that they need to have a certain amount of money in order to buy these deals. And Chad, every single storage deal I've done, and I've done several, have been without using my capital, other people's money. They've all been structured in
Yes.
different ways, from
Oh,
small business administration financing to private lenders to seller financing, equity partners, bank financing. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to do this. So I want you to do a thought audit and ask yourself if you have limiting beliefs and stories you've told yourself that are holding you back. Because it's not just me, but I've helped others buy deals without using a penny of their own money. And then the third thing that holds people back is the fear of making a mistake and buying the wrong deal, losing money. Those are the three obstacles. So when it comes to, let's address 1B, which is we talked about where to find, and you can find them on Google Maps. I can walk you through that. I've done deals through direct mail, wholesalers, brokers, and everything in between, cold calling. When it comes to finding deals, I can pretty much underwrite a deal if I just have one or two data points. If you tell me the revenue of a storage facility, that is enough for me to underwrite the deal and come up with a pretty good offer, more or less. And so let me just walk you through the back of the napkin math. Okay, so let's say, Chad, that you and I are looking at a storage facility that generates $100,000 in annual revenue.
okay.
Now, one thing to keep in mind is that the operating expense ratio in self storage is anywhere between 30 and 40% on average. The smaller the storage facility, the higher the operating expense ratio. So if we're talking about a 10,000 square foot facility, you're probably closer to 40%. If you're talking about a 50,000 square foot facility, you're probably closer to 30%. That's a rule of
Okay.
thumb. Just keep that in mind.
Perfect. So,
Um,
so just for everybody, because I usually talk about, we're figuring NOI, and so we're
yep.
figuring our gross income, and then we're subtracting out vacancy and all of our expenses, right?
Yep.
To come up
Yep.
with that. So for the self-storage space, you're not figuring an exact expense for electricity or at this stage, you're just saying, okay, a smaller facility, 30% of that gross income is going to be an expense, and the net income will be after, right? Larger
Great.
facility, 40%.
I'm so glad you asked that question. Let me answer it directly. At this stage of the game, yes. All I'm trying to do within 1 to 2 minutes is determine, is this an opportunity worth me investing additional time to then go line item by line item with expenses and do a full deep underwriting on it.
Nice.
And I'm gonna do my best to like throw out the fancy industry terms. Underwriting just means analyzing a deal, running the numbers. So at this stage, I'm not going line item by line item to dial in. Is it 31%? Is it 37%? I'm just using quick back of the napkin to see if I'm even in the ballpark of what the seller wants. And by the way, if I'm not in the ballpark, I am still going to make an offer. And more on that a little bit later. But if we're talking, and I want to define something because I don't want to just assume that everybody understands what an operating expense ratio is. It just means if a facility generates $100,000 in gross revenue, it's going to take between $30,000 and $40,000 in operating expenses to achieve that $100,000 in revenue. Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely. So
So,
if you're
yeah,
generating 100,000 and it's a larger facility, and so you're going to figure 30% of that 100,000 is an
which is 30
expense, and
grand.
your
Yep.
expenses is 30 grand. So your net income then is going to be 70 grand.
Bingo.
Okay.
Exactly right. Revenue minus expenses gives us our NOI, which in this hypothetical is $70,000. Now, in storage, there is something, and in commercial real estate, there's something called a cap rate, a capitalization rate. And a cap rate, think of a cap rate as like, what's your return on your investment if you were going to buy that asset in cash? And now don't go crazy on me. I know what you're thinking, like, Alex, I don't have the cash. I couldn't buy it cash. Forget about all that. Just put it off to the side. I just want you to big picture understand that a cap rate is just an expression of value. What's your return on investment if you bought it cash? So if I bought this facility, for example, for $1 million and the NOI is $70,000, if you take 70,000 divided by a million, spot check my math, that should be a 7% cap rate, which
Mm,
means I'd get a 7% return on investment if I had $1 million and I bought that facility cash, right? 70,000
love it.
NOI divided by the purchase price gives us our cap rate. All right. Now, I have something called a cap rate calculator, which, Chad, do you want me to, if I can mention, if it's probably easier because if rather than give you a long URL, if you just text me Chad, like literally just put Chad and I'm going to know you came from Chad to 305-318-6213. 305-318-6213. Text me the word Chad and I'll know to send you for free, like no strings attached. I'll send you my cap rate calculator and offer range calculator. So all you need to do is put in one or two data points and it's going to give you an offer range of what you should make. So I'm going to use a very typical 8% cap rate. Usually a lot of facilities trade for a 7 to 8 cap, Chad, depending on the size, depending on the market. There's some nuances and some variables, but that cap rate calculator just basically tells you, hey, if the facility generates $70,000 in NOI, you want to buy it at the highest possible cap rate, which means it's going to be the lowest value. So if I was going to buy it at a 10 cap, I'd be offering 700,000, right? 70,000 divided by
Yeah.
700,000, that's a 10 cap. And so you can just do some super quick back of the napkin math and analysis, and this calculator makes it very easy for you. Now, if I determine there's an opportunity here and I like the market, I like the demographics, there's things I like about it, then I will invest an additional 20, 30, 45 minutes to go deeper on the underwriting to really, really dial in an offer. But
And
yeah, go ahead.
perfect. I love it. And I think for anybody who's not real familiar with cap rate, if you're wondering, which I know I hear the question all the time, like, why does cap rate matter if I'm not going to pay all cash anyway? What's the point, of figuring the cap rate? And I think for me, the main benefit I see is if you're comparing deals, and let's say we're not going to pay all cash, but the financing is very different on the deals. We have seller financing on this deal we're going to raise private money, and suddenly it gets very complicated to compare the deals because
Yeah.
the financing is so different. Cap rate is a great way to just compare those assets, irregardless of the financing, because it doesn't include any of the financing. So,
That's right. Now, I do want to highlight something. There's a caveat to this because I just spent 3 minutes talking to you about like quick back of the napkin and cap rate, and I tend to place more value on a cap rate when I'm selling a facility versus when I'm buying it because I can't eat a cap rate, right? What I can eat is the cash flow.
yeah.
So why do I share that? At the end of the day, and I think this will simplify if anybody is confused listening to this, hopefully they're not, but if you're still fuzzy on the details, that's okay. Let me simplify this for you. All we're looking for is the delta. In other words, the gap between what is the facility currently generating today in net operating income relative to what it should be generating in net operating income once I go in and I raise the rates to match the average of the street rates. So as an example, if I like Amelia Personal Storage, that's a facility that I bought on 90% seller financing a little bit over 3 years ago. The rates, when we bought it, we literally doubled the rates. We increased the rates by 100%. Why? Because the previous owner lived at a state, wasn't treating it like a business. He bought the facility in 2005 and he had never really done any rent raises. So we found an opportunity. Now, I paid a premium for that because I got great terms. And so I was willing to give the seller their price because I dictated the down payment, the length of the loan, and the interest rate. So we got fantastic seller financing terms. So I paid his price. And that price didn't really make sense per se based on the NOI, but because of the structure of the deal and the fact that we knew Chad, that within a 30-day period, we could go in and double the rates, and all of a sudden the value shot through the roof. And
Yeah.
that's just a very simple value add opportunity just to go in there and raise the rates. We added some marketing, some technology. And so that's the type of opportunity that we look for. So at the end of the day, to simplify this, that's what we're really looking at. It's like, hey, here's what the value of the facility today based on the income it's producing. Here's what it could be doing. Now, I will buy based on what it could be, but I will never pay the price based on pro forma. I'm going to pay today's price based on the value today, but I am factoring in that I have this upside once I do X, Y, and Z.
Man, I love it. Like the hairs on the back of my neck are standing up. I love this. Like that is the sexiest part of a commercial deal is that
Yeah.
forced appreciation, and
That's exactly right. That is an example of forced appreciation.
yeah. So, in the rental game to force that appreciation, you're going to need to make improvements on the property generally or add some feature to the property that changes the comps, right? To force that appreciation. Well, it's amazing. You could buy a facility out of state, not even show up, raise the rent rate and immediately you force appreciation. Like that is
That's
that
right.
is the coolest thing.
Yeah, man.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, for anybody interested in that forced appreciation, what are some things to consider in that? Obviously,
Yeah.
um, in every deal, you can't just step in and double
Right.
the rent,
Right.
right?
No, of course
You're
not. Of course
you're
not.
only bumping to market rent, I'm assuming. You're not like,
That's right.
okay.
So I'll give you some practical examples with Amelia, like a 10 by 10 unit at the time that we bought it. I think they were renting for $45 to $47. Well, when I looked at the average rates, not like the top rate, but if I looked at the competitors within a 5 mile radius and I took the average, it was about $90 to $95 is what a 10 by 10 non-climate controlled unit should be going for. So when we went in there within 30 days, now we didn't take everybody all the way to the 90. I think we took them to 80 or 82. So they're still below market. And think
Right.
about it, Chad, like if you're a customer there and you're used to paying $45 a month. If I take you and now new ownership comes in and they take you and you get a letter in the mail and you get an email and says, "Hey Chad, you've enjoyed this rate for however long, you're going from 45 to 80 or 82." Obviously, you're not going to be happy, but what are you going to do? You're going to look around and say, okay, well, I'm going to move my stuff out and I'm going to find cheaper storage. And what are you going to find? Oh, well, they're at 90 or 95.
Yeah.
And if you're happy with the service they've provided, like I said, it's a very sticky product. Think about if you were renting a 10 by 20 unit and you have a bunch of stuff in there. Think about the pain of disconnect. What would it involve for you to move your stuff out of that? You'd have to chew up an entire weekend. You'd have to get a truck if you don't have a pickup or a box truck. You got to bother friends and family or hire somebody to help you.
Yeah.
It's just a pain.
Right. Complete.
And
And in the end, you just want your stuff out of the weather
safe,
and safe
safe and
there. So,
secure.
yeah.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it becomes a customer service game. We provide safe, secure place for our customers to store their belongings. We have a call center. We don't have any employees on site. So if you wanted to rent a unit, you either scan a QR code or you call the call center. So I don't talk to customers. We have a three-prong management system that allows us to run these facilities from really anywhere. I'm here in Miami. My closest facility is north of Jacksonville, right? I'd have to hop on a plane to get there. I'm not driving 8 hours or whatever it's going to be. And I've owned that facility for a little bit over 3 years, and I've been there twice.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah.
So to implement new technology,
Mhm.
what does that involve actually on site? Is there much on site for them, or is that
Yeah.
just a
Yeah.
website software?
What I mean by implement technology is we have an automated gate that ties in with our software so that the moment somebody becomes delinquent, if we do first of the month billing. So if on the second that money isn't in, their gate code gets shut off. So they have a code and they can no longer access the facility. They would have to fishtail or trail somebody in to get in. And even if they did that, we have cameras. Right now, no, are we micromanaging that? No, we're not.
You're gonna
But when
supervise it.
somebody's late, our boots on the ground person puts an overlock on the hasp. So even if they can put in their code to get in, we have an overlock. People want to access their stuff. So what are they going to do? They're going to call and pay.
Yeah.
Or if they don't pay in storage, we have something called lien laws. So we don't have to evict people like Chad, I used to do, and like you've done probably in the single family space.
Yep.
What would you say is the, depending on the state, what would you say is the average length and cost of an eviction?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not sure about many other states. Ohio is, about 45 days, $300 to $500 court
Okay,
cost.
so that's actually pretty cheap and pretty quick. I know other states
Fairly
where it could
normal.
be north of $1,000 and it could take 6 months, right?
Yeah.
In storage with lien laws, as long as we do certain things and we have to document it, we have to reach out to the customer. Usually, depending on the state, within 65 days, our boots on the ground takes pictures of the unit from the outside because he can't walk in. We list and show the pictures online. And there's companies like lockerfox.com, storage auctions, where it's not like storage wars back in the day. People go online, they see pictures, and they bid on the contents of the unit.
Really?
So as an owner, we generate a little bit of money. It's not a money maker for us at all. Our biggest goal, it's not the money we're going to get on auctioning off the contents. The biggest thing we want to do is have our boots on the ground go in there, clean out the unit, and by the way, somebody is paying us to go collect the
Right.
stuff, so we don't even have to worry about that. Our boots on the ground, broom sweeps the unit, and then we want to put it back online because in storage, the most expensive thing is an unlisted or an unrented unit. We can't generate revenue on a 5 by 10 that's just sitting there empty. So we want to get that unit online, available for somebody to rent it as quickly as possible.
Sure. I
Make
like it.
sense?
Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah.
So, okay, you had said, one of the fears is like that people have to overcome is like the great unknown, right? So, and I hear the great unknown all the time with my business, like how do you do virtual showings and you never meet the tenant and all of these things. And when people are scared of that, to me it just seems kind of amazing because I take it for granted, right? We've been
Yeah.
doing it forever. So in the storage space, I know you've probably heard, like, how do you know you don't have somebody living in the unit? What about theft? If there's nobody there,
Yep.
what have you had any crazy stories? How about that? What's the
Yes,
worst
yes,
story?
100%. So I've shared with you all the reasons I love storage, and I'm gonna always keep it 100 with you guys. And let me share with you some of the mistakes I've made. And despite some of these mistakes, God's blessed me, and I've done very well. But my first and third story, and I'll keep the story pretty tight, Chad. But jump in if you want. My first and third deal were deals in Jackson, Mississippi. Now, if you know anything about Jackson, Mississippi, there's a lot of crime. There's a lot of homelessness, and so I had an opportunity to buy two deals in Jackson, Mississippi. My first one, and then about a year and a half, 2 years later, my second one. And the returns and I was buying it at such a great price that it's almost one of those like I got to do it, right?
Yeah,
And it's a big lesson because just because something looks great on paper, you need to factor in the reality of owning and operating that asset. And where is the headache factor there? Now, here's the irony. I transitioned from single family to storage because I want less headaches. I want more freedom. And this first deal I bought, thankfully, I bought it right because you make your money when you buy, you just realize it when you sell. But the reality was, it was in an area that, let's call it what it is. It was a D neighborhood, a lot of at night, a lot of a big homeless population. And so that led to break-ins, that led to vandalism, that led to bad debt and higher delinquencies. And so it was much more, it was an operational heavy lift. And so even though I bought it right, and even though we cash flowed on that facility, there was more management headaches than what I wanted.
yeah,
And so that facility, I bought my first one for 1.592. I sold it 3 years later for 2.495. So I still did, we cash flowed for 3 years. And I did decent. I brought in an equity partner and got 85% SBA financing, and he funded the 15% down payment. So that's a deal I got into with none of my own money. And I was the operator working with our third party management company. And then I got a call from the broker that sold me the deal about a year and a half later saying, hey, how would you like to own an additional 37,000 square feet of storage 3 miles down the road? And if I didn't go through enough pain on the first one, I said, sure, why not? And now I have 80,000 square feet of storage. I think it was a total of 600 and something units within a 3 mile radius. And my thought was, if I if I have a bigger portfolio, now I can attract the eye of a big storage operator like Public Storage that might want to come in and
Mm,
buy me out.
yeah.
And again, thankfully, I bought it right. I bought that facility for 1.2. I sold it for 1.9. And so I did well because I bought it right, but it was a pain in the butt to operate, man. I dealt with a lot of, so the biggest headache I've experienced in storage is people breaking in. But if you compare that to Amelia, which I've owned for more than 3 years, you know how many break-ins I've had in that market?
Yeah. How many?
Zero.
Zero,
Zero.
3 years.
So what is the takeaway? If I ask my 10-year-old daughter what's one of the most important rules of real estate, she would say location, location, location. Same thing applies in self-storage. In fact, in self-storage, I would tell you, you really have to make sure that you're buying in a market that is undersupplied, that has more demand for storage, and that has certain demographics so that you're not dealing with some of these headaches that I'm sharing with you.
Nice. I like it.
So it's not all peaches and rainbows, but even with that, I still did well on the exit, and I've learned some valuable lessons along the way.
Yes, I love it. I love the transparency and the honesty because,
100%.
yeah, anything in real estate or anything that provides something amazing to you is going to come with some headaches and some effort,
Sure.
and some hard work.
Sure.
That is the nature of it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I always go back to what headaches would you rather deal with, right? Would you rather deal with those headaches or the headaches of a boss who won't let you go on vacation or
Yeah,
won't
man.
let you, be at your child's ceremony, whatever it is. So,
And dude, even with that, here's the crazy thing. At that time that I had that portfolio between Amelia and those two facilities in Mississippi, and then one that I'm a small owner in Ohio, I might spend 2 to 2.5 hours, about 2 hours a week on that portfolio. Like, so even with all those
awesome.
headaches, it wasn't like I was spending like part-time hours, like nothing remotely close to that. And that's because of the way that we manage and operate these facilities remotely, and having access to a third-party management company, a call center. That's what allows for the time freedom. But was I happy to see once a week that, hey, this unit got broken into and now this customer has to like file an insurance claim and now I have to go repair a door and a hasp? No, that wasn't fun.
Right. Putting out fires isn't
Exactly right. Exactly right. But if you buy them in the right location, like I did with Amelia, you don't deal with those headaches.
sure. All right, I love it. I love the whole discussion. I feel like I could just keep asking you questions and man, you hear those numbers, 1.2, I sold it for 1.9. It's like, whoa, yeah, no, that's pretty exciting too. I like
Yeah.
that. So,
Yeah.
for people who want to learn more about you or more about self-storage and the model you teach, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, man. And thank you, man. I appreciate this was a fun conversation, very effortless. I appreciate you having me on your show. A couple different ways. The Storage Wins podcast, which you can find it on Apple or Spotify or really any of the major podcast platforms. Storage Wins. I put out a couple episodes a week. In fact, depending on when this gets released, season 2 is launching at the beginning of February. And I'm doing something, Chad, I've never done before on a podcast. Is the entire season, the premise of the season is we're going to go on a quest, and I'm actually coaching somebody who's never bought a storage facility, and every week I'm coaching him step by step. And the quest and the journey is, can he buy his first facility within 6 months? Like, are we going to be able to get there?
Oh man, that's
And so, dude,
exciting.
I don't know if I'm gonna succeed, if he's gonna succeed, but people are gonna have an opportunity to be a fly on the wall and just kind of listen to that. And so that's depending on when you hear that, it might already be out. But yeah, Storage Wins the podcast. I share videos on my YouTube channel, and then anybody who might be interested in just connecting and learning how they can get involved, the storagewins.com.
Awesome. So definitely check out the podcast, Storage Wins, storagewins.com. I will put in the show notes, or to be brutally honest, my assistant will put in the show notes
I love
Alex's
it.
phone number, so you can text him, Chad, and get that great free resource. And really encourage you to check out his content and get in contact with him if you're interested. Great guy. Alex, thank you for coming on. Always
Thank
enjoy
you,
the
man.
conversation and just a lot of fun and exciting. So I like what
I
you have going on.
I appreciate you, brother. Thanks so much. Anything I can do for anybody listening, just reach out.
All right. Appreciate everybody. As always, subscribe, like, follow, share a rating and review on Apple Podcast. Always appreciate it. We'll catch you next week. And until then, keep building your dream life one door at a time. I get it. I talk to people every day who recognize the massive value to buying rental properties, and they know over time it will drastically change their life, drastically change their financial future, change everything for kids, family, others, people they care about. Okay. But they're held back by one reason or another. Like they don't know the exact steps to focus on, or they've been trying to buy rentals and just getting frustrated by their lack of results, or they don't have enough money, believe they don't have enough money to buy rental properties. And I understand all of those things. That's why I created the One Rental to Freedom program, because it's a group coaching program where we work through all of those things together. It is only uh, highly driven individuals who want to change their life through rental properties and people who are go-givers that want to help each other out so that we all succeed, right? We're going to have a rising tide where all of us get lifted up to success. And so that group, we are always looking for new individuals that match that criteria. If you would like to see if you qualify, you can go to truewealthinvestors.com/contact, fill out the short application and schedule a call with me to see if you qualify. Really, the benefits of the program are that you get clear instruction, clear skills to know how to find good deals, how to run numbers, how to make offers, how to fund the deals with other people's money, and how to manage the properties so that you don't have headaches from tenants. We have weekly support calls to get questions to your answers, as well as accountability to make sure you keep moving forward. And we have a bunch of people in the group that are like-minded and want to help each other out. So you benefit from other people's experience. If that interests you, if you are truly ready to start moving forward in your real estate business, buy rentals, change your financial future, go to truewealthinvestors.com and you can apply there today. I look forward to talking to you soon. We are adding new episodes every week, so make sure and subscribe and check out all of our content at truewealthinvestors.com.